We need to get real about something. Shopping is not fun, especially clothes shopping. I hate going into a dressing room with 1,000,001 things hanging over my arm to try on. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's so annoying having to get in and out of all of these different items just to try them on. The mirror, that's a whole nother story. They're awful. And I end up, and I know you do too, liking nothing. Something's gotta give, and this is where Stitch Fix comes in. Stitch Fix makes clothes shopping so much easier. You get a personal stylist that sends you pieces that match your size, style, and everything's in your budget. No guesswork, no stress. Here's how it works. You take a quick style quiz, you share your size, your style and budget, and you get matched with a real human stylist who catches your vibe. It's no risk, all style. Get a personalized Fix box straight to your door and try it all on in the comfort of your home. Shipping and returns are always free, and there's no subscription required. Plus, get a free try-on for your first fix. Get started today at stitchfix.com/podcast to get $20 off your first order, and they'll waive your styling fee. That's stitchfix.com/podcast.
Deborah had to have surgery.
I had hip surgery in November of 2024.
Her United Healthcare nurse, Crystal, checked on her.
We do a routine call after surgery, and I could tell that she was struggling.
Deborah needed help.
My infection markers were through the roof.
And Crystal knew what to do.
I called the hospital and said she's coming in.
And got Deborah the help she needed.
Crystal and United Healthcare saved my life.
Hear more stories like Deborah's at uhc.com. Benefits, features, and/or devices vary by plan area. Limitation and exclusions apply.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Xyzal is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Xyzal keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all. Take Xyzal. At night.
Welcome to the Murder Diaries.
As always, if you would like to listen to this episode ad-free, you can do so on patreon.com/themurderdiariespod.
Today, we're so beyond grateful to introduce our guest, Amanda Knox. From 2007 to 2015, Amanda spent nearly 4 years in an Italian prison and 8 years on trial for a crime she didn't commit. Her name became a global headline. But she's so much more than the story the world thought it knew. She's an exoneree, journalist, public speaker, and author of 2 powerful books, the New York Times bestseller Waiting to be Heard, and her latest memoir, Free, My Search for Meaning. It was released earlier this year. Amanda also hosts the podcast Hard Knocks and is an executive producer of the Hulu Limited series, The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox. Beyond her story, she's a fierce advocate for criminal justice reform and media ethics, and was the 2024 recipient of the Innocence Network Impact Award. Just a quick heads up for our listeners, we started recording a few minutes into the conversation, so you're jumping in midstream, but don't worry, you're coming in right where things start to get really good. Anyway, what was I saying? I don't remember. You were talking about the use of Italian in the Hulu show.
Oh, right. Yes. So I remember reading one of the comments about the episodes, and one person said, "Ugh, I have to read so many subtitles. This is such a barrier for me." And I was like, imagine what it was like for me. Like that's kind of the point. Like it was really important. Like the fact that this is happening in another language, in another culture, in another place is an important part of the story. And our use of Italian, of subtitles, is very, very intentional because we're trying to convey something to the audience of what it feels like to be me in those moments where I'm trying to make sense of what is happening. So like, have you guys been watching the series at all?
Yes, I'm all caught up.
Okay, great. So like there are moments where we have the subtitles like trickle out of frame because Amanda stops being able to understand what's happening. There are moments where Amanda's getting tunnel vision because like there's just so many Italian voices talking over that it becomes just like this weird cacophony and she can't hear what they're saying. And then you'll see in the final episode, it actually twists and the Italian turns into English because at this point in my story, I'm fluent. And so we're conveying to the audience, like, everyone here is speaking Italian, but you understand everything perfectly because Amanda has come this far that it's like hearing Italian is like hearing English to her now. We do that very intentionally over the course of the series to convey how language plays such an important role in a story, which is ultimately about people who are trying to be understood by each other.
Well, and it showcases your evolution throughout all of the episodes. I loved in the first episode where you're talking to Raffaele and he's like correcting your Italian. And that was such a good setup for, okay, she has some grasp on the language, but there's clearly a barrier there.
Yeah. There are limitations. She doesn't remember how to say mop. It's like, what's the word?
Well, and then it was like also interesting too, because of the role he played in that scene and then would eventually play when you would get to the police station where he was sort of translator, but he still was limited in that role. So it was such a good setup of the two of you as characters. And I say that obviously you're real people, but in the series.
Yeah, don't worry. I know I'm a real person.
Wait, what? Who am I talking to?
Yeah.
I also love in your newest book where you discuss that Harry Potter played such a key pivotal role in you learning Italian, specifically the Goblet of Fire. And I just feel like that's such like a relatable moment for like all millennials listening to your story.
Totally.
Because we've all read them or seen movies multiple times. So I can't imagine trying to learn a new language through such a lengthy kind of dense book. But like you were saying, even in the book, like you were saying, even if you couldn't quite parse the sentence, you could still understand like what was going on because you knew this.
Because I knew the story
so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, especially in my book, when you are going through an extreme crisis situation, you fall back on what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was put in a position where I had to learn Italian very quickly. I had to learn it as quickly as humanly possible because it was already too late. My non-fluency in Italian was part of what got me into prison in the first place. And if I had any hope of getting out, I had to be fluent. And so how do you do that? I fell back on what I knew, especially, by the way, because I was in isolation for the first 8 months of my imprisonment. So it's not, like I didn't have a lot of opportunities. I had to figure it out on my own. And so I immediately asked for a dictionary and I was allowed to go down to the library. And to my great relief, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire in Italian. And I'm such a Potterhead that like I've read that book at least 4 times by the time I've arrived at this point. And I knew the story. I think it's also a great story about different communities coming together and like conflict arising. Yeah. So just going through that book sentence by sentence and deconstructing those sentences in order to understand like, okay, here's the puzzle. Now I'm going to take all the puzzle pieces apart and figure out how they fit back together. That's how language works. And then like doing that enough times to train your brain to do that automatically. Like and it's just a lot of times it's just doing it enough. You just have to keep doing it until you stop thinking about doing it.
Have you seen the Tom Hanks movie, The Terminal?
The one when he's stuck in the airport?
And he's stuck in the airport. He doesn't speak the language. That's literally how the protagonist teaches himself to speak English.
How does he do it?
He gets 2 of the same book. And he references one and then the other. And it's so similar to how you taught yourself. So like clearly we know it works in real life.
It absolutely works. And in fact, when people ask me about becoming fluent, because it's actually really hard to become fluent when you're already an adult. Like I know a lot of bilingual people, but the vast majority of them are bilingual because they learned two languages growing up as kids. And to become bilingual as an adult, it really requires just like banging your head over and over again against this language. And honestly, like being immersed for a significant amount of time. But like what I recommend to people is there a book that you love in English? Take that book and have that be the first book that you read in another language, because you already love the book. You already love the story. You know what's going on. You're not going to get frustrated in that regard. And then you can just keep chipping away at the puzzle piece, deconstruction and reconstruction project.
I so believe that, because as we were discussing before we started recording, I studied abroad in Italy with my husband as well. And people ask all the time, do you speak Italian? And I lived there. And the answer is no. All I came back being able to say, which to my mom's dismay, were like, che cazzo, and like, like all the
parolacce,
like
parolacce.
all the bad words. And so I can't really use those.
Yeah.
But I was an adult at the time, and it was hard to get everything to stick.
Well, especially when you're surrounded by other English-speaking students, be careful what you wish for. I went to Italy to learn Italian, and by gone it, I learned it.
You didn't come home until you were fluent, basically.
Until I was fluent.
Yeah.
For anybody that's not super familiar with your story, which I don't think many of our listeners won't be, can we take a step back a little bit to 2007? We make this decision to go to Italy to study abroad, like so many college students do every year. You're 20, you're studying abroad, and fill us in on what kind of happens next.
Yeah, I mean, the short of it is that 5 weeks into my study abroad journey, one of my roommates was raped and murdered. And I was shortly thereafter accused of orchestrating her rape and murder. And I spent 4 years in prison and 8 years on trial until I was definitively proven innocent. But it was a long journey that took up almost all of my 20s and was a deeply traumatizing experience for me personally. Another aspect of this is that it became an international sensation. So it wasn't just something that was happening on a local level. Like, this was an international news event that stayed very much in the headlines for nearly a decade. And it was at a time when journalism has been going through a crisis for a long time, because journalists are competing with sources where, they just don't have the resources that they used to, and people are getting content for free. And so it's a difficult industry on an economic standpoint. And as a result of that, there was a lot of cutting corners and not doing actual investigative research when telling a story in this, big international way. And so there was a lot of misinformation about my case. There was a lot of just twisting it into the most sensationalized version of a story so that it would capture people's attention. And so I think one of the big lessons to take from the case is, first of all, how justice for the original victim gets lost in this sensationalized storytelling industry, but also how the media can feed into the courtroom, and it becomes this horrible, malicious feedback loop of just sensationalism coming from the prosecution, entering the media, coming back into the courtroom, and just it's this endless, whirlpool of misinformation and injustice. And that's what my case, I think, represents in a big way.
Your new Hulu series does an incredible job of showcasing that. And one of the moments that really caught my attention too was you sort of call out the media at the time using your mother character when she is walking up to her car and there's a journalist talking to, I think it's your sister or somebody.
Mhm.
And she says...
That really happened, by the way.
Oh, I believe it. But she says, why aren't you talking about the person who really did this? They chose to overlook the truth in search of sensationalism.
Yeah, that's one of the great scandals of this case is that despite the fact that it was in like international headlines for nearly 10 years, the vast majority of people out there could not tell you the name of the person who actually murdered Meredith. And some people don't even remember Meredith's name. Like that is just astonishing, you know, and there are consequences to that. The guy who actually murdered Meredith, Rudy Gaudet, I don't know if you guys have kept up with him at all, but he got out of prison after serving 13 years. And he's now on trial again for sexually assaulting another young woman. And no one's covering that in the, you know, like you don't see that in the big headlines. Like it's not about him. And that is, I think, really emblematic of what was important to the media at the time, which was what sells newspapers, and what sold newspapers was this idea of a hypersexualized female villain.
Was Foxy Knox?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's that 2000s misogyny in the media. It's just rampant.
Which is still there.
We saw that even with celebrities at the time. Like we do a separate segment where we talk about pop culture. And this is 2007. So this is like when Paris Hilton is getting dragged through the media. This is when Britney's getting dragged through the media. This is when you're getting dragged through the media. And it's like men didn't have, and I don't want to like overgeneralize, but like generally, like men didn't have that same treatment in the media.
Certainly, like, especially not in the sexualized, like turning a woman's sexuality against her and using that as a means to vilify her, I think is a very special thing for women.
Save just for us.
It's, you know, like it's that, or I think also the LGBTQ community has felt that as well. And you especially saw that, especially in the 90s during the Satanic Panic, and how people were talking that if you are saying that if you were gay, that clearly meant that you were a sexual pervert and were capable of anything. Like that was the idea. And so in a similar way, like women who are vilified sexually, like what the unspoken or sometimes explicitly spoken thing is, if she's so sexed up, what else is she capable of? And that was kind of the messaging, especially in my case, is like, here's this over-sexualized woman who is capable of rape and murder because of look how obsessed with sex she is. Which is also, I think another thing that's really gross about it is how much that like sexualization is actually projected upon the woman. Right? Like, you know, I don't know anything about Britney's or Paris Hilton's sex lives because I didn't, you know, follow and I didn't dig into those gritty details. But like, I wasn't actually a hypersexual person. Like, I was just a normal young person, but I was hypersexualized by these male authority figures who then turned their projected sexualization of me and sort of like put that on me and then had me live with the consequences of their projection. Like that's what's really gross about it. And it's something that I think we all have to live with as women, is it's like we're held responsible for men's like view of us, which is just obscene.
You mentioned the twisting of things that went on with your case, which is, of course, 100% true. Things were getting twisted, including this kind of cheeky, kind of sports-related nickname you had, Foxy Knoxy. They found out about that and then ran with it as if, again, hypersexualizing you as a young girl. And that's not how that nickname really started.
No,
and
I got that nickname when I was 12.
Yeah, you were 12. And if anyone sexualizes it, that's on them. And that's gross, right?
Yeah.
And then the final text message that you sent to Patrick when you didn't have to go into work that night also got twisted because we've got the twisting of this language barrier. So we've got nicknames and persona being twisted. And then we've got on top of that words being twisted. Like, I cannot imagine how that felt. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it must have felt like you're banging your head against a wall. Like, none of this is correct, but I am fighting against I don't know what to try and prove and show that this is not correct. And then you have important people in the case like Raffaele, and there were other moments where they kind of turn their back on you. And please, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it feels like when you're watching this new Hulu Limited series where you really see people turn their back on you and then sometimes try and take it back. But like, it doesn't really work once they sort of say and incriminate you in any way to try and save A, their sanity, but B, their hides. Then you're taking the brunt of everything. You took the consequences for everybody else's actions. And it is so uncomfortable to watch. And I can't imagine what that felt like going through that.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously was very intense and horrible going through it. I think the bigger question, though, that we're attempting to show in the series is how do you make sense of that and how do you make peace with that? I have this joke that I tell sometimes where, do you guys remember the white, gold, blue, black dress?
Yes.
Yes.
The great debate.
The great debate. I mean, I joke that I'm the human version of the white, gold, blue, black dress, that we're all looking at the same dress, but depending on whatever is happening in your brain, you either see it one way or you see it the other. And you will like fight people over whether or not it's blue and black or white and gold. And I think that that's a fascinating phenomena. Like that itself is just an optical illusion, and it's super interesting that, and I love that like an optical illusion of all things like captured the world's attention there for a second, where everyone was like, wait, what is it?
Like, and what an innocent argument to have. You know what I mean? Like, can we all just stick with those sort of arguments?
You know, and I think that, but I think those arguments are like symbols of what we experience every day, which is that people can look at the same facts and derive radically opposing conclusions from them. And that is a really important thing to understand for me about like what happened to me, right? Like I've always wanted to just understand why. Like, why did this happen to me? How could they do this to me? Wasn't it obvious from the beginning that like all of the DNA proved that it was this other guy who had a history of breaking and entering and, you know, violence against women? Like he had a history of this. They knew him. And yet they still go after me, the girl with no motive and no precedent and, you know, like no, you know, like what are they talking? Like, why would they do this? And personally, I've had to grapple with that. And in the series, we show that there are these moments where people are coming into contact with each other, but they have very, very different contexts, very, very different assumptions, very different biases that are informing how they interpret the same set of facts. So, you know, a good example of this, one thing that can lead people to have a different interpretation of events is what information you know ahead of an interaction. And we show this in one of the episodes where I, Amanda, the character, just learns what really happened to Meredith. I ask a police officer, is it really Meredith who died? And how did she die? And they tell me, yes, it is Meredith, and she was slaughtered. Like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea what everybody saw in that room. Everyone's freaking out, but I don't know. Like, I have no idea. And so now I'm like just stricken with this new information, kind of in a daze, experiencing levels of rage now. I'm not like confused, I'm enraged. And I'm walking up the stairs. And then Meredith's friends sort of come over. And they don't have the same information that I have just received. And they come up to me and give me a hug. And they're like, oh my God, I hope she didn't suffer. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They slaughtered her. They slaughtered her. Of course she suffered. Like, what do you mean you hope she didn't suffer? Like, and like, I'm not realizing that they don't know. And they're not realizing that I do know. And so we have this moment of disconnection, which leads them to think weird thoughts about me. But like, it's so human to have that disconnection just based upon the fact that you don't have the same set of information leading into an interaction. Another example of that in the show is at a certain point, the police bring me back to my house. What they say is they want me to look through my knife drawer to see if there are any knives missing. And again, I'm reeling from the fact that my roommate has been slaughtered and I'm exhausted. I've been going through days and days of questioning. And they bring me back into the house and have me sift through the knife drawers. And I'm like, touching these knives and just like the visceral reality of what Meredith must have gone through. I'm like touching sharp objects, any of which could have been used to kill my roommate. And I have a full-blown panic attack. Like, oh my God, I'm just like completely overwhelmed. And I start hyperventilating and crying. And that's my experience of that moment. The cops look at that and they see a confession. They think, oh, Amanda's freaking out because she's being confronted with the reality of what she's done. So they interpret that, because they already are suspicious of me, as like confirmation that they are right to suspect me, and not that I'm just like suffering for the fact that this person I knew and cared about was slaughtered in such a horrific way. And it's so fascinating to me how that kind of mistake is so universal. We all make mistakes like that all the time. We can all see the same set of facts, but depending on the lens through which we see them, we will radically have different opinions about what those facts mean. And that is, I think, a really important lesson to take also from what I experienced.
Oh, and it's the whole like Dunning-Kruger effect sometimes too, where you're so sure about your beliefs and these things that might actually kind of be opinions to you, they kind of become fact. And it's just this idea of like high confidence and possibly the completely wrong idea. And that is exactly what happened here. And unfortunately, it cost you years of your life unfairly.
Yeah.
And thank God you got exonerated. Thank God.
Yeah.
And you had to work hard for that.
Yeah, it could have gone another way for sure. And I think that you got to give credit to the Italian Supreme Court, because it was not a popular decision. Like, I was hated in Italy. And so the idea that I would be let go was seen as like a travesty. And some people still feel like that to this day. It's nuts.
The court of public opinion it's hard to change their decision. And of course, that's not right. The courts looked at what they looked at and they exonerated you not once, but twice, right?
Yep.
So
they also convicted me twice, is what the other side will say. But I had to be convicted twice to be exonerated twice. So
good point.
It was wild to learn about the Italian judicial system, though. It's so different than what we do in the US. And I love that the character Amanda breaks it down in such a way that it's able to be digested by the audience, but also feel the overwhelm that you must have felt at the time. Because I can't imagine, well, you have two judges, but you don't know what the one judge does. I think you called him his sidekick or something.
His sidekick, yeah. I mean, like, there are lots of quirky little differences, including and there's some important ones, like the jury is not sequestered. But I think the biggest and most important one is that civil trials are tried at the same time as criminal trials, which meant that, Meredith's family, my boss, Patrick, even the owner of the house, they all had attorneys in the courtroom who were basically extra prosecutors, who were making arguments to the jury about my guilt and why I should be punished. And so it really felt like the defense was overwhelmed by a tag team. there was my defense and Raffaele's defense, but then there was the prosecutor and then the prosecutor and then the prosecutor and then the prosecutor.
Mhm.
Like, there were just like a series of prosecutors in the courtroom that we had to contend with. And it felt like it was imbalanced in that way.
I think it literally was.
I mean, yes, it was literally imbalanced.
Yeah. Oh,
So you executive produced this new series, and I have to wonder what it felt like for you to revisit that 20-year-old self, as you're looking at it from a lens of a mom, someone who survived this, an exoneree. What was it like to look at 20-year-old Amanda, and how do you feel about her in the moment? And what do you wish you could have done for her in like hindsight? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally.
and you wrote on it as well, too. So you're literally kind of writing exactly what happened. You're kind of reliving these scenes through writing it.
Yeah. Well, I've written 2 memoirs, so I'm pretty used to writing about my past, right?
Mhm.
And writing about my past, not just to write about my past, but because I'm processing that experience, I'm trying to derive meaning and lessons from the past that I've gone through. And writing has been learning how to articulate to yourself not just what happened to you, but what it means to you is, I feel, what people do in therapy without the writing part. Like that is my therapy. And I've been doing that for a long time. The thing that made executive producing and writing on this show different was that I was doing it with others. I've been doing this, like thinking about and writing about my story alone for a long time. Or, like since my husband came into my life, he's my first reader. He's a writer himself. So he's my first reader and my best editor and all of that. So I've been sort of kind of working with him since he came into my life. But long before he came into my life, I was writing and thinking about it. But now I'm sharing it with other people, like a lot of other people. Hundreds of other people have worked on this project. And that can either be a really negative and terrifying experience or a really positive and uplifting one. And I'm really grateful that it has been a tremendously positive and uplifting one for me, because my partners in this project, including, the creator and showrunner of the show, KJ Steinberg, always made me feel valued, not just as like a source, but as a creative partner. And so I've been sort of welcomed into the fold, and I've learned new ways of storytelling that I love and I think are fascinating. And so I've been able to learn new things alongside people who are, the greats in the industry. And in the process of doing this thing that I've been doing my entire adult life, which is like thinking about 20-year-old me and grieving 20-year-old me and coming to terms with the person I've become as a result of what happened to 20-year-old me. And I think that in itself is a universal experience. We all have to grieve the people who we were before life happened to us. And then we have to make sense of it and figure out who we are in the aftermath. The one difference is that Disney, made this like huge project about my life, which allowed me to like basically have the most expensive immersion therapy possible. Like I got to walk through my apartment that they completely rebuilt, from crime scene footage so that it perfectly recreated that space to the point where I was like, I entered into it and I was like, oh my God, those are my socks that are hanging on the drying rack that I never got back. Like when my house became a crime scene, I never got anything back. Like everything I owned, these were all like my favorite possessions, either destroyed, taken as evidence. I never got anything back. And here it all was.
Wow. We need to get real about something. Shopping is not fun, especially clothes shopping. I hate going into a dressing room with 1,000,001 things hanging over my arm to try on. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's so annoying having to get in and out of all of these different items just to try them on. The mirror, that's a whole nother story. They're awful. And I end up, and I know you do too, liking nothing. Something's gotta give, and this is where Stitch Fix comes in. Stitch Fix makes clothes shopping so much easier. You get a personal stylist that sends you pieces that match your size, style, and everything's in your budget. No guesswork, no stress. Here's how it works. You take a quick style quiz, you share your size, your style and budget, and you get matched with a real human stylist who catches your vibe. It's no risk, all style. Get a personalized Fix box straight to your door and try it all on in the comfort of your home. Shipping and returns are always free, and there's no subscription required. Plus, get a free try-on for your first fix. Get started today at stitchfix.com/podcast to get $20 off your first order, and they'll waive your styling fee. That's stitchfix.com/podcast.
I think we can all agree that feeling better in your body shouldn't be a full-time job. That's why Hers makes it easier to get started and stick with it. It's backed by expert-guided online care that puts your weight loss goals first. Hers is transforming women's healthcare by providing access to affordable weight loss treatment plans. They connect you with a medical provider who will work with you to determine the best treatment option for you. If you're prescribed, you can get medication as a part of a doctor-developed weight loss program, complete with ongoing care, check-ins, dosage and medication adjustments, and access to 24/7 online support at no additional cost. There aren't any hidden fees, and there are no membership fees. Weight loss by Hers is realistic, not restrictive. Hers provides access to affordable weight loss plans built around oral medication kits and GLP-1 injectable options. With oral medication kits starting at just $69 per month with a 10-month plan when paid up front. This isn't cookie-cutter care that forgets you in the waiting room. It's your health and goals put first, with real medical providers making sure that you get what you need to get results, all from the comfort of your couch. So if you've been struggling with your weight loss journey, it's time you find the best option that works for you through Hers. Whether you want to lose weight, grow thicker, fuller hair, or find relief for anxiety, Hers has you covered. Visit forhers.com/diaries to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's forhers.com/diaries. forhers.com/diaries. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not approved or reviewed for safety, effectiveness, or quality by the FDA. Prescription required. See website for full details, important safety information, and restrictions. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased.
Back in 2018, I was looking for a vitamin regimen that I knew I could trust. That's why it was such a relief when my sister told me about Ritual. They're mom-founded and third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes. And what else really sold me was that you can see their sources and suppliers behind their key ingredients right there on their website. Besides the vitamins from Ritual that I take, they also offer tailored nutrient support for key phases of pregnancy, from fertility support formulated to support conception outcomes to their essential prenatal and postnatal multi-options, which support key nutrient needs before, during, and after pregnancy. They also have their essential protein daily shake that's formulated specifically for pregnancy and postpartum. On top of all that, they also have their Symbiotic Plus that I take every single day along with my multivitamin. I love Ritual so much that I make sure all of my friends that are having babies and family planning turn to Ritual for their prenatal, pregnancy, and postpartum support. What's also really awesome about Ritual is how easy it is to take. Each capsule has this really cool delayed release design that makes it really gentle even on an empty stomach. Most importantly, it's third-party tested for allergens, microbes, and heavy metals. It's non-GMO, project verified, gluten and major allergen free, and made traceable. When it comes to pregnancy and postpartum support, you want products backed by research and transparency. Mom-founded Ritual puts in the work and shows you the proof. Get 25% off your first month at ritual.com/diaries. That's ritual.com/diaries for 25% off.
Disney's Lilo & Stitch has finally landed on Disney Plus. Now you can watch the global phenomenon at home with your Ohana.
Be good
for 1 second.
Lilo and Stitch is verified hot on Rotten Tomatoes with an audience score of 93%.
Perfect.
Stitch is also cute and fluffy.
Disney's Lilo and Stitch, rated PG, now streaming on Disney Plus. And right now, you can get Disney Plus, Hulu, and all of ESPN with an incredible limited time offer. Terms apply.
Icy Hot Pro with 2 max strength pain relievers. Targets multiple pain receptors. Ice works fast. Heat makes it last.
That's incredible. And you have such a great conversation on your podcast, Hard Knocks, with Monica Lewinsky, a little bit about this experience too of writing and producing on this show, and because she also had similar experiences. So what a powerful way to grab back what you can. And quite literally that ended up maybe being some of your possessions, like you were saying, when you got to walk the scene.
Yeah, the prop department was really nice. They wrapped up a few things for me and sent it home with me, which was super cool.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was fun.
I think that's such a testament to a new belief that people have in who they feel Amanda Knox is. And I think something that's kind of been a bit unfair is that people got to know you through one of the biggest, most traumatic experiences that I've probably ever heard of anybody going through. That's how people got to know you. And I feel like finally through the memoirs and the 2016 interview and this show, we're getting to hear your voice in a different way. And of course, through your podcast. So, I mean, just thank you for continuing to share, you know, because a lot of the public doesn't deserve that from you, from the things that they believed and have probably said about you.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't really think about things in terms of what people deserve because I know that life isn't fair. I do try to think about like what's helpful, what's productive. I try to ask myself that the Buddhists say, before you say anything, you should ask, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? It's a really, really good measure for like when you have a thought and you feel the urge to express it. 1, is it true? 2, is it necessary? Like, do you really need to say it? And 3, is it kind? Because if it's true and if it's necessary, then the third one is more about how do you say it? How do you say what you have, what is true and what is necessary in a way that leaves the world a better place? And I think that is something that really guides me in my own process of sharing things. You know, I share things because I want to feel connected to people again after having been ostracized and vilified and like exiled from the rest of humanity. Like, I want to connect with people again. And I've learned over the years that while I've gone through a very extreme experience, it's actually really relatable to people who have not gone through that exact experience. And I've been forced to learn to articulate under pressure what this experience was and what it means. And as a result of that, like I have language for it. And sometimes the only way that we can make sense of our lives is by finding language for it. And that's really hard. And like, I felt really gratified to learn that like other people have felt like the language I use to make meaning out of my own life can also be language that they can use to make meanings out of their lives. And that's really gratifying.
That relates to another question of how do you share your story like this while protecting your peace? And I feel like what you were just talking about sort of answers that, but I feel like there might be some more to that. How do you protect your peace?
Protect my peace. I never really think about protecting my peace. I'm more like, here's my peace. Everyone have some peace. Do you want a piece of this peace? Get in on this
I love
piece.
that.
This is awesome.
You get a piece, you get a piece, you get a piece.
Yeah, you get a piece, you get a piece. I'm like Oprah Winfrey over here. Peace, peace, peace. Yeah, no, I don't feel like I need to protect my peace so much as I do have a complex relationship with privacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that is more challenging for me because after like they were parading my personal vibrator in front of a court of law and like asking me about my sex habits and my hygiene habits. Like that was minutely scrutinized internationally. I lived in a prison where we had zero privacy. I had to strip naked and squat frequently, had people like prodding my orifices frequently. So I lived where I had zero privacy. And reclaiming a sense of ownership over my intimacy is like, it's like once it's been taken away from you, it's hard to get back. And it's not just my privacy anymore, right? Like it's my husband's privacy, it's my children's privacy. It's their right to live a life that is not in the shadow of the worst experience I've ever been through. And navigating that in a world that demands transparency in order to prove authenticity is challenging. But yeah, that's something that I think I'm still working through.
Privacy versus peace, I think gosh, you're literally one of the most articulate people that I've ever flippin' met. That's very eye-opening to me too, who is obviously the person that kind of asked that question.
I mean, maybe, although maybe I just didn't understand your question because I don't even know what protecting your peace means. Like, what does that mean?
It just means like protecting your mental health.
Yeah. But you showed it perfectly where you're like, I don't have a problem with sharing. Everyone's getting some peace here. And you are in this phase where you are sharing a lot with the show and the book. So I feel like that is completely authentic to hear that is how you feel right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that privacy is the most important, probably part of what makes up part of someone's peace. Maybe if we're really going to get deep with it.
And like your choice to share it or not.
Yeah.
And like one of my experiences is that I wasn't given a choice of whether or not my most intimate and worst experiences were shared or not. It's like a double-edged sword because on the one hand, frickin' hell, people know things about me that I will never know about other people. On the other hand, I don't have to think about hiding it, right? Like there are people who have gone through traumatic things where every interaction that any meaningful interaction that they have with a person, they have to figure out how and if they will share this part of themselves with that person. And it could be a thing that becomes an obstacle between you and another person. And me, I never had a choice. So I never have to think about that. And in fact, like I just sort of always assume that everyone knows the dirty details of my life. And I'm like surprised when people don't.
Oh my gosh. That makes a lot of sense, I guess is what I'm trying to say when it comes from your perspective. And we talked even a little bit earlier about how there are different perspectives with a lot of things when we're talking about the dress. And there's this thing that really kind of creeps me out sometimes when you think about it, how there's all of these different versions of you living in everybody who has had even like one interaction with you that was memorable enough to be like, that is so-and-so. They see you as that version of yourself. Like, of course, it might be a piece of you, but it isn't all of you because, they're not you. They're not going to share your brain. But so there's all these different versions of you living in everybody who knows you's brain, and it trips me out.
Okay, well, now I'm about to tell you something that will hopefully not disturb you. That's true of you too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's true of all of us. Like
it's true of everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone is just a version, like everyone who knows you or has ever encountered you has an idea of you in their head.
Yeah.
And it might or might not be, based in reality. But like, regardless, you don't exist as you yourself in other people's minds.
That's right.
So one of those big lessons for me was like, oh, this is so traumatic, but also this is so universal. You know?
Knowing that, though, that you exist in multitudes out in everyone's mind, in the general public's mind, who do you say you are?
Well, I mean, isn't that the great Zen question? And if you want to get really spiritual and philosophical about it, like I write about this in my book, or also I actually did that particular question is a question that I grapple when I meditate. And I have a really good meditation series of talks that I do on the Waking Up app. If anyone's curious about it, it's called Resilience. But I do like meditations on these big questions. And to give you like a sneak peek, like the short of it is that this idea of me exists in the sense that like, here we are talking about it, here it is. It's like my reputation, right? Like everyone's idea of themselves or their reputation is a thing that exists in the commons because we have to have some way of talking about how we're interacting with each other, right? And the idea of me in people's minds is an idea that they use in order to understand how to interact with themselves and with the world, and specifically with ideas of me and what that represents for them. But is that real? Is it a fundamental fact of the universe? No. It's a collective illusion that we all create amongst ourselves. And it's meaningful because it has consequences. But is it real? No. So what does that mean? What do you take from that? Well, I take solace from the fact that like we all belong to each other. And I can have some say in who I am, but it's not just up to me. And that can be a very scary realization, but it's also a realization that can give you some amount of peace because it's just true. Like if you think that you are responsible for everything that anyone thinks about you, you will drive yourself crazy. You will be experiencing suffering on a level that there is no cure because you can't control it. And so once you like give up trying to control something that you can't, it's relief. And so, yeah.
It's kind of like when you create any sort of art. So obviously you've written books, you've now helped create a series. But when you create something like that and it's let out into the public, it's no longer yours. And so you can have your intention, but that only goes so far. It now is up to the public or whoever is the consuming person to consume the content and make their own decisions of it. And that's sort of how, at least that's what I'm getting from what you're saying. That's how we all are in our lives, right? All our interactions are, we do our best, we put out what we put out, and people take what they want from it.
Yep. And that's all we can do.
And isn't that a lesson that's like full circle for everything that you've gone through too? The last thing you were able to control is getting these people to believe in your rightful innocence. And luckily, again, you were twice exonerated, but like you mentioned, we're also twice convicted because these people just wouldn't freaking believe you because they had already made up who you were and what you did, which the theories they came up with were just so wild to me, by the way. It's pretty...
Yeah, no, it's like weird looking back on it because it's like, how could anyone have believed that?
They spent more time fabricating stories than actually doing any police work.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, that's again, like, but one of the things that I try to do is I try to put myself in the prosecutor's shoes. And in Italy, prosecutors lead investigations. So that's why my prosecutor is such a huge figure. He's directly responsible for everything that happened. And again, it's such a human thing to do. He believes himself to be a logical person. Okay, fine. But to be a logical person who arrives at correct conclusions, you have to base your logic on correct premises. And he based his logic on incorrect premises. The first and foremost of which was that he never believed that the break-in that happened, that the person who broke into my house actually broke into my house. He believed from day one that the break-in was staged. And if you logically deduce from that premise, you can logically come up with what he ultimately came up with. But it was a false premise. And so here we are.
There's that scene where I can't remember if it was a female investigator or Manini, but they look at the window and they go, so who broke in? Spider-Man?
Yeah, that was my prosecutor, yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what you explained. Like they didn't believe it. So they went with that didn't happen from minute one instead of trying to figure out how would somebody do that. They brought up Spider-Man, who's fictitious. That's how little they believed it.
Exactly. And as it turned out, the person who actually committed this crime had broken into second-story windows before, but that was after they had already made that conclusion. That was wrong. And then everything sort of follows. And it's like, but it is outrageous how much logically has to follow that had to be completely made up. You're right. Like one of the things that they had to make up to make this crime make sense was when they finally found Rudy Guedé's DNA all over Meredith's body. Well, clearly this burglar had played a role in this crime, but Raffaele has never seen him in his entire life. And I don't even know his name. Like he plays basketball with the guys who lives downstairs from us. That's how I recognized him. But I didn't know this person. I didn't have a relationship with him. But in order for him to have committed this crime with me and my boyfriend, we must have been in a secret love triangle that no one ever knew about. And that was a fundamental thing that the police had to logically conclude based upon their theory, was that I was in a secret love triangle for which there was no basis whatsoever. No text messages, no phone calls, no witnesses. And yet it had to be true because how else could they have committed the crime together?
They were just filling in the gaps with what they had. But like you said, they were coming from, it's a false premise, essentially.
Yep. I bring it back to your suggestion that it's similar to the dress debate. It wasn't just one person that had that thought. He convinced, or other people convinced themselves that this was true. So it wasn't just one person thinking illogically. It was, well, that sounds like an interesting story. It could be true. Let's run with it. And then everyone around the world adopts it. It's just...
Yeah. The groupthink aspect of it is absolutely a thing.
And I fear when it comes to when you're explaining that prosecutors actually lead the investigations, I fear that there is almost a conflict of interest there, because it's especially if they start coming up with different theories of the person they're going to be prosecuting against, it can bring about exactly what happened, these kind of false premises that they're filling in the gaps from.
Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting. These justice systems see things very differently. So in the U.S., there's a separation between prosecutors and detectives, with the idea that one is a check and balance against the other, right? Detectives can come up with all the theories that they want, but ultimately it has to pass the scrutiny of a prosecutor who's going to be taking it to court. And he might decide not to try the case because there is insufficient evidence. In Italy, the idea is that the prosecutor is involved from the beginning in order to sort of impose from the get-go that check and balance, to basically just be the boss of the detectives and act as a kind of first judge who says, is there evidence or is there not? But of course, when you're in bed with the investigation the entire time, you're going to get attached to the conclusions that you derive in your investigation. You're not going to be separate from it and objective about it in the way that you think you would be. But of course, if you were to ask my prosecutor, he would say that he was utterly objective about it. It's all a matter of perspective.
We see that conflict of interest when he interacts, at least in the show, with the coroner. And the coroner has been saying the entire time, I need it to get to the body within a timely manner. Otherwise, I won't be able to give you time of death. And eventually he wasn't able to get that correct time of death. And that could have also helped you.
Oh, 100%. Like if they could show that she was murdered shortly after she arrived home because Rudy Gade had already broken into our apartment and he attacked her basically as soon as she went into her bedroom. I had like an alibi, not just with my boyfriend, but with a friend of his that had come over to the house and like seen us there at that time. So like I would have had an ironclad alibi if they had actually let the coroner get the time of death.
And it wouldn't just have helped you as the person on trial, it would have helped her family get answers so much sooner and arrive at the correct answers.
Yeah. But I don't think he, at the time, understood how important the time of death was. And he did a calculation where he was like, I want to get DNA and fingerprints, and that's more important than time of death. And that was a mistake.
They kind of glazed over all that evidence that they got anyways, the fingerprints and all of that, because they got so wrapped up into everything that they ultimately did to you.
Yeah.
We see in the series that they did find a secondary crime scene with blood on the sheets downstairs in the boys' apartment, and then that's completely ignored for forever, basically.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, because that was something that drove my creator and showrunner, KJ, crazy. I mean, they did extensive research into the case, and she was just flabbergasted that blood in the downstairs apartment was not taken seriously. And like, how did Rudy Gade, covered in blood, get back to his apartment without being seen? I mean, it was at night, but this is a busy area. Like there are people walking around. I think that he took Meredith's keys, and she had keys to the downstairs apartment, and he had seen, he had been there before. I think he would have gone down there and changed his clothes and would have taken clothes from the boys downstairs. That's what I think happened.
That sounds like the most logical thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was never, ever investigated. And answers about that at this point, there's no way to get them.
This experience has not only led to an incredible series, 2 memoirs, a podcast, but also, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you've been doing a lot of advocacy work throughout the years with Frederick Douglass Project for Justice and being an ambassador for the Innocence Network. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'm on the board of the Innocence Center, which is based out of California. Yeah, I do a lot of innocence advocacy work, which includes, doing fundraisers for innocence projects, because it takes a lot of funding in order to get the DNA tests and to file the reports and all of that, to do private investigations of cases. So it takes resources. I try to do a lot of fundraising for them. I do a lot of talking about criminal justice related issues in my work. And then the other thing that I do is I go to the legislature, at least here in Washington State, is where I've been focusing primarily, to try to change laws around interrogations to make them safer. And it's a freaking uphill battle. I am so glad I'm not in politics on a day-to-day basis, because I think I would lose my mind. But it's a long and arduous journey to try to change the system for the better, even in common sense ways. And that's just something as simple as making sure that all communications between police and witnesses or suspects are recorded. That's not guaranteed. And it makes no sense when we all have recording devices on us at all times. And yet,
I never even thought that would be something that had to be fought for, because I kind of just assumed, with the privilege of not having to go through that ever, that wasn't a thing. We've got the body cam footage. Like you said, there's recording devices everywhere. I just kind of assumed they all were, but
nope.
Wow.
Nope. Yeah, that's an issue. There's issues of transparency about how people are obtaining statements and what information they are feeding people. And there's a resistance to transparency, which defies common sense. And yet most people don't even think that that's a thing. A lot of people don't even know that police will lie to you, like that that's legal and that they're trained to do that. And not just lie to you if you're a suspect, they'll lie to you if you're a witness. Like they'll just lie to you. And most people don't assume that to be the case. And I've met people who are just scandalized by the fact that that is a common thing that happens every day. Like,
they get people to turn on each other all the time by doing that. They'll be like, well, so-and-so already told us you were there. So why don't you just like make this easier? Let's talk about what you were doing there, And then it ends up in false confessions.
And they'll do the same thing to witnesses. They'll say, well, Sherry said that that person was there. Don't you remember seeing that person there? And then they're like, wow, if Sherry remembers, I guess I remember he was there. You know, like these are psychological tricks to get people to deliver statements that are helpful to, the investigation and prosecution in the sense that they, are affirmative, but they're not helpful in the sense that they're not true. So,
right.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and yourself with us and our listeners. I know that they're going to, I don't know if enjoy's the right word because it is such a heavy topic, but they're going to be really grateful to hear what you have to say.
Oh, well, thanks so much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Of course. And we can't wait to see what's next for you. Thank you again.
Take care.
Make sure to follow us on all of our socials. And remember, if you want to listen ad-free, head over to patreon.com/themurderdiariespod. And until then,
stay safe.
Bye. We need to get real about something. Shopping is not fun, especially clothes shopping. I hate going into a dressing room with 1,000,001 things hanging over my arm to try on. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's so annoying having to get in and out of all of these different items just to try them on. The mirror, that's a whole nother story. They're awful. And I end up, and I know you do too, liking nothing. Something's gotta give, and this is where Stitch Fix comes in. Stitch Fix makes clothes shopping so much easier. You get a personal stylist that sends you pieces that match your size, style, and everything's in your budget. No guesswork, no stress. Here's how it works. You take a quick style quiz, you share your size, your style and budget, and you get matched with a real human stylist who catches your vibe. It's no risk, all style. Get a personalized Fix box straight to your door and try it all on in the comfort of your home. Shipping and returns are always free, and there's no subscription required. Plus, get a free try-on for your first fix. Get started today at stitchfix.com/podcast to get $20 off your first order, and they'll waive your styling fee. That's stitchfix.com/podcast.
I think we can all agree that feeling better in your body shouldn't be a full-time job. That's why Hers makes it easier to get started and stick with it. It's backed by expert-guided online care that puts your weight loss goals first. Hers is transforming women's healthcare by providing access to affordable weight loss treatment plans. They connect you with a medical provider who will work with you to determine the best treatment option for you. If you're prescribed, you can get medication as a part of a doctor-developed weight loss program, complete with ongoing care, check-ins, dosage and medication adjustments, and access to 24/7 online support at no additional cost. There aren't any hidden fees, and there are no membership fees. Weight loss by Hers is realistic, not restrictive. Hers provides access to affordable weight loss plans built around oral medication kits and GLP-1 injectable options. With oral medication kits starting at just $69 per month with a 10-month plan when paid up front. This isn't cookie-cutter care that forgets you in the waiting room. It's your health and goals put first, with real medical providers making sure that you get what you need to get results, all from the comfort of your couch. So if you've been struggling with your weight loss journey, it's time you find the best option that works for you through Hers. Whether you want to lose weight, grow thicker, fuller hair, or find relief for anxiety, Hers has you covered. Visit forhers.com/diaries to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's forhers.com/diaries. forhers.com/diaries. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not approved or reviewed for safety, effectiveness, or quality by the FDA. Prescription required. See website for full details, important safety information, and restrictions. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased.
Back in 2018, I was looking for a vitamin regimen that I knew I could trust. That's why it was such a relief when my sister told me about Ritual. They're mom-founded and third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes. And what else really sold me was that you can see their sources and suppliers behind their key ingredients right there on their website. Besides the vitamins from Ritual that I take, they also offer tailored nutrient support for key phases of pregnancy, from fertility support formulated to support conception outcomes to their essential prenatal and postnatal multi-options, which support key nutrient needs before, during, and after pregnancy. They also have their essential protein daily shake that's formulated specifically for pregnancy and postpartum. On top of all that, they also have their Symbiotic Plus that I take every single day along with my multivitamin. I love Ritual so much that I make sure all of my friends that are having babies and family planning turn to Ritual for their prenatal, pregnancy, and postpartum support. What's also really awesome about Ritual is how easy it is to take. Each capsule has this really cool delayed release design that makes it really gentle even on an empty stomach. Most importantly, it's third-party tested for allergens, microbes, and heavy metals. It's non-GMO, project verified, gluten and major allergen free, and made traceable. When it comes to pregnancy and postpartum support, you want products backed by research and transparency. Mom Founded Ritual puts in the work and shows you the proof. Get 25% off your first month at ritual.com/diaries. That's ritual.com/diaries for 25% off.